uh, they don't know. I mean, he had some health issues, but nothing that should have caused that.
Yeah.
Right,
Mm.
okay, so. We.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Hi, Linda. Yeah, it'll pop up. Yeah, we're all good. Thank you. Oh, yeah.
The people who decide to walk over it.
Yeah,
So-
yeah.
Well, that was before they hooked up.
That's smart.
Just in case people don't know,
I
there's
did,
a line there.
I thought and I walked around.
I
And then
thought
I
you
walked
did that.
around and then I walked around.
Yeah, I know the gym afterwards. I'm not speaking about to walk in the rain. I have tripped over things even though I've seen them.
Hi, Lee. It's good to see you.
I know, it's like, oh my God. Essentially, it was cold, it's the more contagious.
Right. I forgot to bring my.
Oh, I already signed.
I cannot. Steve came to your house. Yeah, you did too. I'm doing that. Taking my home.
So we live in town. So it's very strictly the problem.
I think it's going to be contested for the first time.
We contested last year,
Not really.
It's what?
No,
very much.
no, that was for the trustee. Not for the mayor.
I consider that all of this.
No.
There's 5 of them and.
Right.
He's the trustee, and
Yeah, but the mayor has been leading the island for a long time, but I think it's.
Right, the trustees being talented.
Oh, you talking about Thomas?
I have no.
Yeah, and that could be dangerous, so.
Yeah.
I will tell you, don't tell.
There's some of the things primary services. Now, it was Friday. It was last, it was 2 weeks ago. I was here, I was a few minutes late, so she had said that there was a woman who had.
Oh, I-
Candle lighting, but there were 3 of them, one of them, this person drives. She's going to Florida.
Oh, yeah.
I know.
The Three Musketeers, yeah. Rhoda needs a ride. Joy P does, Joy P.
Number.
Five didn't work, so she.
Oh. Great, thank you guys so much for helping her.
All right, now.
I will.
Elaine's picking her up next Thursday. Elaine's getting up early.
Time to get up, Rabbi?
Get up at 6:30. Yeah.
Make sure I'm up. I get up at 2, well, one I didn't do it anymore. Get up at 2 things, to get on a plane or go skiing. That.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we have to overuse the working.
I mean, I even have to get
I'm
up.
still in the bed. And I don't sit well, I'm a night person,
I am too.
so,
I'm.
Yeah.
Feel so good if
this morning I had to be, had my car out of the door.
I used to get up at 5:30 and then it's like.
You can sleep in a little.
If you look at, I mean, you're a little late. because
Okay. Oh, okay. All right. Thanks, Eileen. They're coming.
Sure.
So manager, just in case somebody wants to have fruit before.
Oh, thank you.
They're delicious.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I will be fine.
yeah. They're very sweet, Eileen, enjoy it.
I think. You look at yourself, the hardest part is getting it inside of the skin.
Good morning.
Yeah, oh my God, anything here. Bye.
Bye, Eileen, thank you.
Bye.
I saw Andy Aaron on Tuesday. He sent me, make his information.
Oh, okay, great.
I looked her up, then I listened to, she did 2 sermons on.
Yeah,
the website.
She's a lovely person. I think you'll like her.
Camp and then it's the other one,
I just got mine.
not go, not knowing
Yeah.
something and trying to.
Oh, okay. Okay, I don't remember. I've watched these different candidate sermons and stuff. Yeah.
Something and wait, and I have to go
And
back.
then it's gone.
That's why I like yours, because once I read it out loud and then.
Right, right.
And I got more for Stevens.
Yeah.
Good morning, Judy R.
Good morning, Rabbi, once again.
How's the weather in Omaha today?
It's cold and the wind is gonna be terrible. It's gonna be like 40 miles an hour.
Oh, boy.
Stay safe.
That sounds about right.
But it's gonna be 50 on Sunday.
Oh, nice. What's it gonna be in Great Neck over the weekend?
Right now, I think it's going to get to 50s
Oh,
today. Yeah.
Today it's gonna be 50, but it's raining and yeah. Oh, you like rain?
But yes, Saturday, Sunday is gonna.
Yeah. that's her.
Sometimes I like to be in my house. Live outside and. Guilty not doing anything. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Got a quiet group, Rabbi?
Good morning, Judy.
Good morning.
Again.
Again.
Mhm. Okay, this week.
Oh,
kind
I
of-
was talking and I wonder why, Judy, you weren't answering me, but I think I was on mute. Was I on mute?
Now you're not.
Well, I was before, right? I think I was talking to you, I was asking you questions and you weren't answering me.
Because we can hear you.
I'd never ignore you, Rabbi.
Good answer.
Yeah, so, okay. I thought maybe you were just mad at me or something.
No, never. I don't think so. Not so far.
Good morning, Shelley.
Good morning. How are you?
Hi,
Hey,
Shelley.
Shelley, you look all dressed up today.
I am all dressed up. I'm seeing my Aunt Bernie, who is not really my aunt, but back in the day, you didn't call people by their first name. She's Corey Winter, our emeritus cantor. She's his mom, and also was a school librarian and inspired me to become a school librarian. So we're going to meet and talk about books, and I'm going to show her the wedding video.
Oh, so nice.
I'm really excited about it. She's not doing well physically, but mentally, she's 97, super sharp. Was best friends with my mom. And Corey was actually born when his mom couldn't climb stairs. So they stayed with mom and dad. So yeah, I'm getting all dressed up.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah,
Very nice.
excited about it. Yeah.
All right. Well, good to see everybody. It's 9:15, so we'll go ahead and get started. So just before we start our class, I want to remind you that next Thursday is when we have our assistant rabbi candidate here. And she's going to be guest teaching this class, and then we're going to have a brunch in this room right after with her. So I want to ask you all to please come, be here in person. Those of you who are, if you can, well, online, we don't have any great neck folks online who are in person. But anyway, just a reminder to be here so that we can show her how wonderful our community is, and she can meet you and you can meet her. All right.
Rabbi question?
Yes, Karen. Yeah.
Audacious question. Can we know her name?
Her name is Megan.
Megan.
Yeah, her name is Megan. Yes, and she's going to be ordained in May from Hebrew Union College. So she's coming out of rabbinic school.
Mhm.
She's a
Does
lovely
she have a last
person.
name we can know?
Yeah, well,
her
not
last-
yet. I'll tell you later.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll introduce her and everything next week.
Well, is she high
Um,
or just you're interviewing her?
No, we're interviewing her. She
Oh,
hasn't been hired yet. She's coming for interviews.
okay.
Yeah. So this is a part of the interview. It's to teach this class. You guys, don't be too hard on her. I'm kidding. All right, friends. We are let's go ahead and get started. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asot b'divrei Torah. All right, so we're still in our blessing on the Talit, because there's a little more that I want to do with it. So if just to refresh, where it's page 26 in the prayer book is the blessing for the Talit. So we have learned now about the basis for the mitzvah of Talit. We have learned about Reform Judaism's historical attitudes toward Talit and ritual garb. We've talked about our movement's kind of the evolution in our philosophy, such that Talit is now here in the prayer book where it used to not be. And it's listed here as an option for those who wear it. Not everybody does, but if you do, then this is the blessing. Now, today we're gonna do an exploration. I'll probably carry over to one more session. We're going to explore an important issue in the area of Talit, which is the issue of gender. So you may or may not realize this, but in more traditional circles, the question, good morning, Silvers.
Minutes just to get here from Baby Lab.
Oh, wow.
Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Well, it's good to see Silvers here. Welcome. All right. So So in more traditional Jewish circles, it's certainly not the case for us, but in more traditional communities, the issue of women wearing a talit is sometimes very controversial. We're going to look at two texts that deal with this question. Today, we're going to, they're both responsa. Responsa are halachic opinions, a Jewish law, Jewish legal texts that deal with the halakha of talit in respect as it pertains to women. The first one we're going to look at today is a responsum by Rabbi Moshe Feinstein. Rabbi Moshe Feinstein was the most prominent halachic authority of American Judaism in the 20th century. He was he lived in New York City and led a yeshiva in Manhattan on the Lower East Side, which is there, and you can see it. It's his. He died, I want to say, in the 80s, but I think maybe his grandson runs it now or whatnot. But he wrote many responses. He has a whole collection of them that are published in Hebrew, and he is looked to today in his time and today as the foremost halachic authority for the Haredi community in America, and not even only the Haredi, but the Orthodox world today. So we're going to read a responsum that he wrote I think it's 1972. He wrote a responsum on the issue of women wearing a talit. So we're going to study his text, and then after that, we're going to read a responsum by the CCAR Responsa Committee, written by Rabbi Solomon Freehoff, who was the chairman of the CCAR Responsa Committee for many years. And he wrote also on the question of women wearing a talit from the Reform movement's perspective. They are very different, not surprisingly. But what you'll see in the Feinstein text is how the issue of women wearing a talit is the talit issue is like a lightning rod in Orthodox circles for the broader question of the role of women in Judaism. Okay, so it's a fascinating text. Also, one that I will warn you in advance is going to be very not consistent with the way we see things in this Reform community, but that's okay, because it's important to learn from different perspectives. It's important to hear different voices and allow them to to provoke questions and conversation, and also to challenge assumptions. We don't have to agree with what he says to be challenged by what he said. Okay, Courtney.
That women don't wear a kippah, because even in the Torah that God is referred to as he.
Well, so that's not the reason in respect to talit. However, definitely in a classical framework, God is viewed as masculine. Although in the Kabbalah specifically, but not only Kabbalah, but really in the Kabbalah emphasizes what's called Shekhinah, which is the dwelling presence of God in the world. And Shekhinah is the feminine. So God has masculine aspects and feminine aspects also. And the Kabbalah talks about how the Shekhinah, the dwelling presence of God in the world, which is the aspect of God that we have most kind of closest access to, is feminine. But God in the broader, sense that is definitely, thought of as masculine in traditional framework. But that's not the reason for the talit. The issue in the talit is halakha, Jewish law. And here's the issue, and Feinstein, I think, talks about it, but we need to understand this in a little, in some detail before we read him. So mitzvot, generally speaking, are incumbent, on all Jews, as being partners in the covenant with God. God commands 613 mitzvot. They're incumbent on us, all of us, to do. However, there is an exception. There's a category. There's a category in the Jewish law that creates an exception for mitzvot for women and certain other categories of people, and that is mitzvot that are time bound. Okay, so Lee, you're nodding. So have you learned about this a little bit before?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So some of you may have heard about this, some of you may not have. But the category is mitzvot which are time bound, meaning a mitzvah that has to be performed at a certain time. That category, and then there are exceptions to that category. But without diving too deeply into it, but just so you understand, if a mitzvah has to be performed at a specific time, then it's classified as a time-bound mitzvah, and women are exempt from it. Okay, so wearing a talit is a time-bound mitzvah, because we studied last time, you wear it in the morning, right? You don't wear it in the evening, you wear it in the morning because of being able to see and everything that we discussed last time. And because it's time bound, women are exempt. Now, and incidentally, to be really lovely about it, but this is the case, the others who are exempt from time bound mitzvot are slaves and how would you put it? Like people who are like mentally retarded, intellectually challenged. Okay, so this is we're part of a tradition that goes back a long time, and in the ancient world and the medieval world, they definitely thought about things differently than we do now, and so these halakha created these categories. Which create exemptions, but the exempt. Let's see. Can you take a guess as to why women would be exempt from time-bound mitzvah? Yeah, Courtney. Right. Okay, because it speaks to gender roles, and this is why Feinstein gets so worked up about it. Okay, it's not, I mean, on the surface level, it's like, okay, you have a talit on with fringes. I mean, who cares if a woman, what's the difference? But it's because it's sick, because of this category of time-bound mitzvot, and it speaks to what are you doing at that particular time. It points to gender roles in the society. Okay, home responsibilities, dealing with children, all of these kinds of things. So it's a much bigger issue than just fringes on your garment.
But isn't it also those communities, the women that.
Can you speak loudly?
In some of these communities, it's the woman that goes to work and the men studies.
In some cases, yeah. And yes. Okay, however, we're going to see how Feinstein speaks about it. Okay, but yeah, that's the major issue. Why he's very passionate about it. So I just want you to have that kind of setting for it. Now, when I say when women are exempt, men are obligated in the mitzvot, women are exempt. But of course, exempt only means you don't have to do it. It might still suggest that you could if you want to. However, we're gonna see how Feinstein deals with that. Functionally, in the Feinstein's world, an exemption becomes a prohibition. Okay, so let's get into Feinstein. Let me pull up I'm gonna share it okay. Oh, no, this is the wrong one. I'm sorry. Okay. Here we are. Sometimes the sharing thing is weird because it shows some of the things. All right, here we are. Okay. Okay. So the question, a responsa literature in Hebrew is called she'elot utshuvot, questions and answers. That's the genre, because the way that they are created, the reason why a halachic authority like Rabbi Feinstein would write a responsum is because he'd asked a question. Okay, so a question would be posed to a legal authority, someone that's recognized as a legal authority, and then he would write a responsum, an answer, a teshuva, to the question. Now, the questions can be stated, the questions are like cases. Here's a situation, that they're usually asked by another rabbi or, a leader in a community. Here's a question that I have for you as a halakhic authority, and I'm looking for your opinion on it. Okay. So the questions are framed however like the questioner writes them. In some cases, a question may be, posed orally or something to the respondent. And then the respondent, the authority, might state at the beginning of his responsum the question. Like, this question was presented to me and here's what I'm going to answer. So he might state the question in his own words. I don't know if this question was stated by Feinstein himself in his own words, or it was written, by a questioner. In any case, it's a question, and the question isn't just straight up like, what do you think about women wearing a talit? It's fraught with its own kind of opinions in it. All right. So here's the question that he addresses. There are certain smug and self-important women who are joining forces with the broader international movement to wage war against established norms. But these women in question, who are Torah observant, want to join in their war in ways that impact many laws of the Torah. Some among them pray in a talit and do other such things. Oh, he states it. It's his own statement, and want me to give my opinion on this matter. So he finds him stating the question. I translated this a long time ago, so I don't remember. All right, we have to unpack the question before we even start reading his answer. What do you see here in the question as he stated?
His opinion about women.
His opinion about women. What do you see? What does it say? What's the suggestion?
My feeling that the word smug was such a derogatory word that that these women feel that they have the right to wear the Torah. But he's saying that even though they do follow the Torah rules, and by reading the Torah, they really don't have the right to wear a Torah.
A talit.
A talit.
Yeah.
I think that he's putting them down as below a man.
Yeah. Right. He is putting them down. I mean, he's describing them as smug and self-important. That tells you a lot of what he thinks. Notice here, he says, these are Torah observant women.
Yes.
Okay. So he's not talking about Reform Jews. Okay. Feinstein is, is an intellectual giant and and a major figure in 20th century American Judaism. He doesn't really care very much or at all about Reform Jews. To the extent that in his literature he writes about us, it's very derogatory and very dismissive. Okay, so it's important to know when we're reading this text and when we're reading responsa literature is a community leader communicating with his own community. This is internal communication. He didn't write this for us. Okay, so we have to, that's important to recognize because we're reading this as outsiders looking in. Okay. So that informs our reading, or it should inform our reading to say like, he's not talking to us. So, how do we respond to that? I mean, we might not respond, we maybe shouldn't respond to it as like, he's causing an affront to me because he's not even talking to me. He's talking to his own community. And what he sees happening in his community, this is the early 70s. What's going on in the world? Women's lib, right? This is the feminist movement. Okay, so what happened in the Orthodox world in the general, American studies, the feminist movement, also in the Orthodox world, there's a feminist movement too. Okay, and so feminist Orthodox women are starting to push boundaries and norms. And he says some of them they're wanting to take on more observance in their Judaism. They're wanting to pray with a talit and read from the Torah and do other things that traditionally they don't do, but they're Orthodox and they're doing it. Okay, so Rabbi Feinstein here is responding to what's happening in his own community, and he's very upset about it. Okay, as the language indicates. Are any of you familiar with Women of the Wall? Have you heard of that? Of them? Okay. Yeah, so it's interesting. We had identify Women of the Wall with Anat Hoffman. Anat Hoffman, if you don't know her, she's she's been here. Okay. Anat Hoffman is a Reform Jew. Okay. She was the director of the Religious Action Center of Israel, which is the lobbying arm of the Reform movement in Israel. She's very closely identified with Women of the Wall. Now, however, Women of the Wall was not begun by Reform Jews. It was begun by Orthodox Jews. Okay, so Women of the Wall, you see them in the news now because they go out to the Western Wall on Rosh Chodesh, which is a women's kind of, day in the cycle. And they go out and they put on talitot and they bring Torah scrolls and they pray at the wall. And they always those efforts are always opposed by people, Haredi men who are like throwing stuff at them and treating them horribly, and the women get arrested because it's against the law in Israel to pray at the wall with talit for women, and they arrest them, and there's a whole kind of sequence of civil disobedience and whatnot.
Just Haredi men. It's young Haredi school girls.
Right.
Yeah, the Haredi community, that's right.
Do I get into the brainwashing? I don't get young Haredi girls who have been some of the vocal or in the.
Vicious.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, violent. Yeah, it is violent. Yeah. Yeah.
It's It's not just Haredi men saying, oh, you know, the reform women are trying to do this, but it's also the Haredi women.
Right, yeah, that's right. Yeah, so it's the whole kind of traditionalist Haredi world that opposes all this, but today it's a lot of them are Reform Jews. But Women of the Wall as a movement started by Orthodox women. Okay, who wanted to do this. So this is what Feinstein is responding to. All right, so let's look at his answer to the question. First, one needs to know that part of the essence of our pure faith is that the whole Torah, both written and oral, was given by God himself on Mount Sinai by way of Moshe Rabbeinu. And it is impossible to change even one dot, whether in order to be lenient or in order to be stringent. However, we are commanded that when there is a need to fence and to fortify the Torah, the Sanhedrin and the sages of the Torah were obligated to issue takanot, repairs, in order to forbid certain things, or similarly, to make certain things obligatory, but only with a notification from the rabbis that it is to make a takana or to fence in the Torah. Since the time we were scattered among the lands, we no longer have this power. However, rabbis in every place have the authority to make takanot, but each takana applies only to their place and their time. So this is initially, this is a statement of legal theory. How does the Torah work? How does change happen in respect to the Torah? It doesn't pertain specifically to our issue, but he's framing it with a statement of legal theory to make the case. He's saying that he's going to say that these women who are wearing talitot are trying to change the Torah. The Torah says that women, that because the talit is a mitzvah that's time bound, it doesn't apply to women, it applies only to men. And these women, who he describes as smug and self-important, the feminists, Orthodox Jews, are coming in and they're trying to change the Torah. And he says, nobody can change the Torah. The Torah is God's word. It was given by God to Moses on Mount Sinai. There are certain mechanisms for altering laws of the Torah, and it was the Sanhedrin that existed a long time ago, and they don't exist anymore. So you can't just change rules. And number two, in our time, rabbinic authorities like him have the authority to make these takanot, which are like these decrees that say like certain things are allowed or certain things are prohibited in order to, uphold the Torah, make sure the Torah survives. But that's the only way the Torah can be changed. Other than that, regular folks don't have the authority to go about and just change the Torah. This is his viewpoint. That's why he begins with this statement. Okay, we're going to read on. We'll talk, that raises all kinds of issues, but let's read on and we'll talk a little more about it. The Torah exempts women from positive time-bound mitzvot. Positive meaning thou shalt, which is what the exemption is. Not all time-bound, it's a positive time-bound, sorry. This is a law from the Torah, and the sages did not obligate women to do these mitzvot because they did not see any need to do so. Okay, so he's saying here that the Torah exempts, these mitzvot don't apply to women. If the ancient sages felt that there was a reason to require women to follow them, they would have done that, but they didn't. Okay, so that tells us that this is a law and it's obligatory, we have to follow it. Can't just change it willy-nilly. On the contrary, we learn that the need to exempt them comes specifically from the fact that the Torah exempts them. Okay, period. It's the Torah does it. So that's it. The reasons of the Torah are not known to lay people, let alone to Talmidei Chachamim, the students, the sages, the students of the wise. Rather, We have to believe that there are significant reasons that God gave the Torah without revealing reasons for certain laws, just as there are reasons for other laws that are revealed to everyone. Okay, so there's lots of laws in the Torah. They don't always have reasons with them. And that's how God chose to give it. And that's how it is. Okay. Now he goes on to explain, although he said, we don't really know the reasons for it. He gives a very strong reason for it. Okay, because he's ideologically committed to this. Ordinary women in the world are not wealthy, and they bear the responsibility of raising their children. This work is more important to God and to the Torah than obligating women to do the mitzvot in question. God created the natural order of the world such that in every species of living things, the females raise the offspring. The human species is not meant to depart from this rule. It is also the nature of women to be more capable than men of raising the children. It is for this reason that the halakha is lenient in not obligating them to study Torah or to do positive time-bound mitzvot. All right, so let's talk about this paragraph. What are your reactions to it? Vicky.
I think if we look at it in the context of. I'm sorry, when was all this written?
1972.
Even then, I mean, the world was in a state of flux, everything was changing. Students were rebelling. I know my husband was at Columbia, the School of Architecture. I think he was rebelling when he was in class, but you know, it was an upheaval. So I think before that, everything was in status quo. And I can understand that viewpoint. I think it was in keeping with women's place in the world. Women, for the most part, you know, very often they didn't go to college. They weren't, you know, they weren't allowed into various programs, with very small quota. When my cousin, who was 11 years older than myself, went to law school, she was one of maybe 2 or 3 women. So, yes, women grew up thinking, you know, that was their place in the world. So I don't think that any of this would strike anyone as, you know, anything horrible. It was the way of the world. But looking at it now, in view of everything, you know, women live and women place in the world and how much we've accomplished as a group and so forth, we look at it and it's, you know, almost horrible. You know, and how can we be treated this way? But I don't think to be, you know, to the great ear, I don't think it was, I don't think their reaction was the way we react to it.
Right, for sure. I mean, he's speaking to a community with a different value system than what we have in 2023 in Reform Judaism. I want you to notice here that the question is dealing with women wearing the fringes. The way he's framing this is taking the fringes as symbolic, and the exemption of the fringes as symbolic of God's natural order in the world. Okay, so he's saying that this represents something about how God designed things and how God wants the world to be. And that the social structures that Vicky, that you're talking about, the kind of the pre-feminist movement social structures that were at that time kind of taken for granted, he says is, it's not just kind of how we organize our society. It's not just the way things are, but it's consistent with the divine order. Okay, and so that this feminist movement that's pushing against those things. There is not just about women trying to get more rights, or it's for him, this is about a challenge to God and an affront to the way God designed the world, to all of creation. It's cosmic for Feinstein. Okay, so Shelley's had her hand up. Go ahead, Shelley.
So I have to say I'm impressed with how he started this, although I completely disagree with what he's saying. And I'm going to be interested to see how the reform response does this as well, because he doesn't just immediately go into his own opinion, but I'm saying this from the librarian point of view, he is taking a look at his primary source. And what's the primary source? Authoritative source is Torah. So he states that. He goes, here is my source. This is an authoritative source. I'm not just making all this stuff up. And he starts with that before he then frames his opinion based on this authoritative source. It seems to me that Jews, I don't care if you're Orthodox, Haredi, Reform, it seems to me that Jews do this. That's why we study from text instead of just start, talking about stuff. And that does impress me. I can see why he's considered the scholar, although when we get to his opinion, of course, we all, I think, don't agree with it. And yet here it's totally based on this authoritative source of the Torah.
Right. Okay, good. It's an appeal to authority. All right, so we've got some hands. We'll just go around here. Susan. Oh, thank you.
The Torah is doesn't grow. It's stilted. It's whatever it's written. It's very literal. Whatever was written stays that way. Just the way the people today are arguing that the Constitution should be interpreted broadly.
Yes.
He's interpreting it literally. Also, he's interpreting this as God, unquotes, or given to Moses, wrote the Torah. In contrast to an incredible course that I took at the temple when I first moved here, that was given by a professor at Oberlin College, who talked about how the Babylonians, told the stories and eventually wrote the Torah. So he's taking, God wrote the Torah and the Torah is stilted. And the way it was written, that's the way it's going to be.
Yeah,
There's no
that's right.
change.
I mean, the Torah, it's an article of faith and fact for
That's
him
it.
that the Torah was given by God. And that's why he says human beings do not have the right to just change it. There are mechanisms in the internal to the halakhic system that enable change and growth and so forth. He's not saying that the Torah that things never ever change, but he's saying that they change only through the recognized mechanisms of change that are internal to the system. And here the push for change is coming from some force external to the system.
Right.
And it's an affront for him. Okay. All right. So who was next? Howard. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
and of course, those recognized mechanisms are designed to protect the people who run the
That's right.
recognized mechanisms.
Yes.
I'm thinking of the story of the oven of Achnai, right? Where God says, "Oh, my children, you've outsmarted me. I've given you the Torah." I don't recall whether it's in that story or elsewhere or in both. The business about the Torah not being up in the heavens or whatever it is different. It's with you, it is in your hands.
Right.
So I wonder how Rabbi Feinstein reconciles that language with his, and of course, many others, interpretation that, the Torah is not in the hands of the common person.
but rather is in the hands of a select group of people who are the only ones who have the intellectual capacity and the learning knowledge to render. opinions.
Well, yeah, so it's a great question, and the point that you made about, the mechanisms both reflect and perpetuate a power structure is right on. I mean, that Feinstein would root this argument in that story, because that story says that the story is a debate over between the sages about a particular issue of halakha, and the sages they kind of vote on it, and they come down with an answer, and there's one sage, Rabbi Eliezer, who says, no, that you're wrong, and he makes these appeals to God, and eventually God intervenes and says, Rabbi Eliezer is right, the rest of you are wrong. But then the rejoinder to God is, the Torah is not in heaven, the Torah is here, you gave it to us, it's ours to decide, and God says, you're right. Effectively, you're right. Okay, so the answer is that the authority to make halakhic decisions rests with the sages. That's what Feinstein is saying. It doesn't rest with the common people. The story of that is not that just any old Joe gets to make halakhic interpretations. It's the sages, the rabbis of the community who make the decisions. Okay, so in that respect, it's consistent. Now, I want to raise up something else based on what Howard, you said about perpetuating the power structure. So there's a feminist Orthodox scholar. I'm forgetting her name at the moment. It'll come to me. But she's a contemporary writer. She's an Orthodox Jew, she's feminist, and she argues, well, hold on, let me think of this. Okay, so there's kind of a debate between her and another feminist scholar who's a reform by the name of Rachel Adler. So Adler and this other scholar's name I'm forgetting are kind of involved in a debate today about how to bring feminist change to Judaism. So Adler, the reform scholar, says that the only way to bring change that will advance the goals of feminism in Judaism is is from the outside, like external to the existing power structure, because the existing power structure is male rabbis who make illegal decisions, and they have an inherent interest in preserving their role and their power. Plus, they see things through the lens of the structure that has produced them. So Adler says it will never happen, like feminist change will never happen if power rests only with existing the male power structure. It's just not possible. Whereas the other scholar, who's the Orthodox, says change has to happen in the Orthodox world, has to happen through the existing power structure, not from external pushes by a non-recognized power. Because if women who are, women Orthodox, if women who are recognized to not have any kind of authority start taking it for themselves, it will inevitably fail within the Orthodox system, because the community recognizes an existing power structure and authority that will be perceived as being challenged. So what she says has to happen is that Orthodox women have to kind of work through the recognized channels of authority within their own community to persuade and invite change rather than confronting and challenging. So that's an interesting debate. Which, raise your hand if you have watched The Handmaid's Tale. Okay, so Courtney has seen it, and this show is absolutely fascinating. You have got to watch it. You have to watch it. I'm telling you, it raises so many interesting issues that are relevant to our time and everything. Oh, yeah, okay, I don't know, I haven't read the books.
The book is great.
Okay, but anyway, in the show,
Right, that was.
yeah, in the show, okay. So in the show, and I just watched this episode, maybe last night, I think. 'Cause I'm watching, I just finished season 2 and I'm in season 3 now. So anyway, the Handmaid's Tale is a dystopian story about, you know, the Christian fundamentalist revolution in America, and it's a you know, country that's based on those principles, and in which women are not allowed to read. Okay, and so in the episode that I just watched, the wife, the kind of the main wife character of the commander and whatever, who's fully bought into this whole system. She's kind of convinced, they have a baby daughter now. She's convinced that this idea of women not being able to read is bad. This is like a switch in her mentality. So she comes before the council of the men rulers. And she brings like a whole bunch of the wives with her, and she says, we believe, you know, that the word that our society should be governed by the word of God, and that everybody needs to know the word of God. And so, including the girls. And so we believe that the girls need to be able to read and study the word of God. And we're appealing to you to consider this. And so she's got all these other wives like standing with her. They're like kind of making this push, but they're doing it through the recognized channels. They're not rebelling. They're following the Orthodox scholars kind of recommendation through the recognized channels. But then Serena, the main wife, picks up a Bible and she opens it and she reads a verse from the Bible. And at that point, these other wives that are standing with her, they walk out. Because this is outright rebellion, because it's against the law for women to read. So these other women start like falling away. And then eventually she's standing alone by herself, doing an all-out rebellion against the men right in their face, reading from the Bible. And it's like this very powerful, intense moment. And you get the sense almost that she like has prevailed against them. But then she doesn't, they cut off her finger because it's prohibited. So it's like, it's a really like this stuff that Feinstein is kind of talking about plays out in that show, and it plays out in society, not in that extreme level, but it plays out in society all the time about like kind of how we as a society define gender roles and how change is made, you know, power struggles. It's all happening here in this text and in that show. All right, so Courtney, you are next.
On quite a few things, where you acknowledge consistency and recognize channels. And I think that, you know, gender roles is also, I think, quite interesting to hear from different perspectives, different generations speaking, where at 42, at being born, having been born 1980s, because I probably won't divulge anything here, but, you know, I'm actually, yeah, I think that what I look at is the fact that I see traditional roles. You know, where I remarked earlier, you know, we discussed that it, you know, the woman's role to, they can't pray at the same time because it interferes with their governing the house. You know, and also I think it's also the preservation of having a strong Jewish identity. Because if a woman, if that web is missing, she cannot then raise a rabbi and to perpetuate that. You know, so I look at it, you know, also something, the only consistency that I've ever had was as telling a rabbi, I was in Bagel Hut instead of going to Hebrew school. So in a spiritual journey, if you will, down the road, I looked for
Gotcha.
the traditional. Who am I to also come along and say, well, we're working now, yes, we can, but I think there has to be this harmonious balance. And I think that we're missing that, especially in this day and age, where things are so, rapid. I also, and lastly, that's the feel with the anti-Semitism has always unfortunately been there, that evil current, but now it's because people are much more open with it. And to deny ourselves of, I think as a movement, as Jews, if there's people are not recognizing that we are in fact Jewish, like we've died because we're Jewish. And if we start contradicting all these beliefs, can't people then look, it's like, well, what do they believe? Where's their core foundation? Because I don't know, I don't hear about this in other religions. So I feel a little backwards, they're not part of the whole feminist movement. I think
Yeah, okay, good questions about like broader questions about our relationship to tradition and what do we change and at what point does change kind of attenuate the the connection with the tradition and identity with it. I think that's good, but yeah, it's interesting. I mean, what you said, Courtney, about kind of balance and ambivalence. I mean, these are things that I know. I mean, my wife talks about it all the time as a working woman, a working mother. The difficulty and the challenges of kind of finding the right way to manage that. And in this way, like Feinstein can make us think, even if we say like, I don't agree with him, like that, this is not how I see the world. He can make us think because he does raise some questions that we also grapple. Okay, I want to look, let me just, yeah, okay. So we'll see a little more in the next paragraph I want to comment on. Linda, you had your hand up.
This is page later from what he wrote, but I was watching Parent Test. I don't know if anyone saw it this week. And as an educator, I found it fascinating because he would just be aghast at this. Parents are put to the test and how they relate to their children. And they had a gay couple and they were the most sensitive to the emotions of their children that they adopted. And he would just be over the moon with this. He would go berserk. But I want to mention that. And then I'm sitting there cheering these two guys on because they're so sensitive, so feeling, so in tune to what the kids need versus heterosexual couples. And also, I'm studying Torah with an Orthodox woman, and I find that as time goes by, it's harder and harder for me to accept the way she accepts her life because she's such, I see glimpses into her marriage on Zoom, and she's such a second-class citizen to her husband, and she just accepts this. He was raised Reform in Bayside, and then because she wanted to marry this guy, she had to become Orthodox versus family, and just the way that she has cards in her house, no gossip and this and that. I'd be afraid to enter her house and do the wrong thing, say the wrong thing, act like. I mean, it's so stringent, and I find it so difficult to just accept how she accepts all these things without questioning. It's just the way it is.
Okay,
So,
yeah, so this is also a challenge perhaps, and in a sense, not directly even related to this issue we're discussing, but a challenge toward pluralism, because you're saying like she accepts this life or whatever that she's chosen, and maybe she's happy or whatever. But you're saying you have trouble accepting that she accepts it. Right. So so that's something to think about. Like, I mean, if she accepts it and she's happy, should we then say like, well, I mean, I'm happy that she's happy. Like if you accept it, I accept it. Or do we say like, I don't like that you like your life?
no, but she tries to see on to me, join Great Neck Synagogue, do this.
Okay, well, so that's different. That's invasion of boundaries. But I mean, I'm just wondering this broader question of how we, relate to different viewpoints on things. Okay, Mel has his hand up. Go ahead, Mel.
Hi, Rabbi and fellow students. So when I looked at your selection, I said, what is this rabbi doing? What's he doing with such a fiery, controversial reading? And I said, well, it's like an academic, like a classroom where you have to look at ideas and not throw them, not discard them immediately. So I applaud you, Rabbi, for bringing up such a controversial, to me. And, this is this is happening to 2023 all around us. It's right in front of us, this whole issue of, being able to just talk about things like this and the change in our culture. To me, in my opinion, this is a man who wrote something, he's afraid. He's afraid of losing his culture. He's already lost. In some ways, it's over. In a way, it's the future. You know what? It's never going back to the way it was. And also, I have to say this about this famous theme. I have to say this. Like Caesar said, keep your friends near and keep your enemies nearer, And unfortunately, this rabbi, this wonderful rabbi, it's like an enemy. He's like, he's threatened. And we're not, the last thing I want to say is, we're all Jews and we all own a piece of Judaism. I think you said that, Rabbi. No, and especially in Reform Synagogue, everybody is welcome. Nobody has a monopoly on ideas about Judaism. That's what I wanted to share.
Yeah, thank you, Mel. And it's a really good insight that you had about saying that Feinstein is afraid. That is absolutely true. And it's reflected not only here, but it's reflected in a lot of his responses. And not only even his, but also lots of traditionalist Orthodox responsa reflect that kind of fear, because there's a lot happening in the world around them that pushes against their culture, right? And Feinstein's major enterprise, whether he articulates it or not, his major enterprise is to uphold and protect the culture that he believes in. And hold on, Susan. And his belief system, which he's not I mean, we give him the benefit of the doubt. He's not doing this out of malice or anything, or being deceitful or whatever. He believes in this culture. He believes that the Torah is the word of God from Sinai. He believes in the traditional gender roles. He believes in all of these things. And as a leader of a community, his job is to uphold that. And there's lots of threats. There's lots of things that he perceives as threatening to the existence of that culture. So his texts here, in which, unlike a reform response, in which are like advisory opinions, here's what we think, you do what you want. His texts are binding on his community. Okay, he's an authority. So this has force, and he's putting it out there as a way to defend the community against an external threat. All right, I want to read more. We'll take more comments and if we can, but I want to see if we can get through this, at least in the broad strokes. All right, so he goes on. Therefore, even if the social order in the world were to change for all women, as well as for wealthy women, in a given time, meaning in a given historical context, even when it's possible to transfer the responsibility of raising the children to other people, like people do in our country, the law of the Torah does not change, nor does the law of the sages. This is a very powerful statement. Okay, you may or may not agree with it, but he's saying the world around us may be changing, right? Lots of women are going into the workplace now. They're hiring nannies. They're outsourcing childcare, right, to other people. That's how the world is going. He says, and he talks about the wealthy women. Look, there's people that can afford to do that. But just because the world around us is changing doesn't mean that it's right. Okay? And human social structures change all the time. human norms and values change all the time. But God's law and God's design is eternal. Okay, so he's saying that all of this that's happening now it may be very powerful forces. It may be convincing a lot of people. Lots of people may be inspired and caught up in it. But that doesn't matter. What matters is God's law. Okay, that's the position that Feinstein is taking. And interestingly, all of this he sees in the question of women wearing a talit. Don't forget that. Okay, that's one of the most fascinating things about this text.
So that's what it's about.
That's right. That's right. So these little things, sometimes that we who are maybe less connected than Feinstein and his adherents are to ritual practice. We say like, who cares about, I mean, what, so what? You have a garment on, you know, to him, this represents an effort to overturn the order of the world. Yeah, that's right. Although for him, notice what he said here. He doesn't formulate it in that way. He says that raising children, well, as he says, this work of raising children is more important to God and to the Torah than obligating women to do these mitzvot. If you ask Feinstein the question, what's more important, raising your children or wearing a talit? He says, raising your children by far. Okay, so if he says that women now can want to come along and wear talit and do these things that that men do and take themselves out of the realm of raising children, go to work and do all these other things and outsource the raising of your children, that's neglecting the very important work that is very important to God. That's how he sees it. We may not see it that way, but he sees it that way, and it's fodder for us to think about too, even if we don't agree. All right, so we're over our time. We're gonna have to pick up. There's more. Okay, we're gonna have to pick up. I'm sorry. We're gonna have to pick up later. There's a fascinating text, and then there's the Rabbi Freehoff one, which is the Reform perspective on it. So we're gonna see different perspectives, but let some of this settle in. Think about it. You know, the child. To me, studying perspectives that you don't agree with is one of the most interesting and fascinating things you could do.
Once again, Rabbi.
So next time,
Class.
thank you. Next time, we're going to have Megan, our candidate for assistant rabbi, here to teach us. Please be here if you can, so that she can meet you, you can meet her, and we're gonna have brunch together after. All right. Thank you, Susan.
I'm not sure the exact words of the phrase, but women are valued in the Orthodox tradition. And don't they use the word prize above rubies, which means.
Yeah, it's from Eshet Chayil, probably.
5 years in Orthodox schools. And I think it's important to understand another person's point of view, even though you or I don't agree, but I think it's very important. Just the way my grandson is going to this program in Israel, where half the students are Catholic, half are Jewish. And the point is to understand the Catholics' point of view towards belief. Even though he hopefully, doesn't accept it. But I think it's very important to see this and to realize that maybe it's wrong for you, but you don't always have the right answer.
Good. That's humility that
Yes.
Pluralism requires. Okay, good. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. So now, when we pick up next week, Megan's not going to be teaching this text. She's going to teach something else related to prayer. So we'll just resume with it the following. All right, everybody. Yeah, Judy. Oh, you're on mute, Judy. I didn't know if you were trying to talk.
I was trying to say, once again, Rabbi, wonderful class.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad
No
you
one
enjoyed
should
it.
miss it.
Right. Yep.
Say,
Good day.
bye, everybody. Have a great day.
Bye.